In the heart of a stormy night, with lightning tearing the sky apart and thunder shaking the earth, Dr. Helen Wright, a renowned ophthalmologist, was working late in her clinic. The rain hammered against the windows like desperate spectral fingers trying to get in. It was a night that felt as if nature itself was warning mankind to stay indoors, away from the dark secrets that it hid. Dr. Wright was examining the peculiar case of Mr. Jenkins, a patient who had come in complaining about seeing shadows that weren't there and lights flickering in his vision. These symptoms were unusual, not fitting any known condition, which piqued Dr. Wright's curiosity. As she peered deeper into his eyes with her instruments, the power flickered, plunging the room into darkness momentarily. When the lights came back, Mr. Jenkins was standing closer to her than before, his eyes now glowing faintly in the dim light. Confused and slightly unnerved, Dr. Wright decided to run some more tests. However, as she turned to grab her tools, she found Mr. Jenkins had vanished. The only evidence of his presence was the open window, which she was sure had been closed moments ago. The storm outside had intensified, making it impossible for anyone to have escaped through it. Determined to find an explanation, Dr. Wright reviewed the security footage, only to discover that Mr. Jenkins had never entered the clinic. The video showed her talking and reacting to thin air. Her blood ran cold as she replayed the footage, trying to make sense of it. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Turning around, she found herself face to face with Mr. Jenkins, or rather, what she thought was Mr. Jenkins. His eyes were now completely black, void of any white or iris, and his mouth twisted into an unnatural grin. "You see what you're not supposed to see, Doctor," he whispered, his voice echoing around the room as if coming from everywhere. Before she could react, he lunged at her, and everything went black. Dr. Wright woke up the next morning on the clinic floor. The storm passed, and the morning sun shining through the windows. There was no sign of Mr. Jenkins, or any struggle from the night before. Shaken, she tried to convince herself it was all a hallucination, a product of her overworked mind and the stormy night. However, as days passed, patients began to report seeing shadows and flickering lights just like Mr. Jenkins had described. Each time, Dr. Wright could do nothing but wonder what she had seen that night and what had truly happened. The most disturbing part was that her own vision began to flicker, seeing shadows where there were none, a constant reminder of the night she wished she could forget. Subscribe to the channel, and also on our Telegram and Facebook there are a lot of interesting stories.